Okay, we'll get started. Apologies for the delay. And as you may have noticed, we do have a waiting room, but we are not excluding people. We just have that for security purposes in case we get any Zoom bombs or anything like that. I'm going to go first through some top line items, and then we'll do an overview. And in between that, I'll allow everyone to introduce themselves who'd like to. And then we'll go over an overview of the council, its charge, and any updates we have for all of you before engaging in the opening listening session. So greetings, everyone, and welcome to the July listening sessions for the California Truth and Healing Council. Monday was the Northern California listening session, with Central on Tuesday, Southern on Wednesday, Eastern today, and a regular business meeting of the council tomorrow at 1. My name is Christina Snyder, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians and the Tribal Advisor for Governor Gavin Newsom. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you from the ancestral homelands of the Patwin people. I'm now going to briefly walk through some of the logistics and preliminary business for today's listening session. First, we are recording this listening session, and it's available for public participation via Zoom and dial-in. For those interested in following the council, ongoing updates, including listening session recordings and the listening session summary documents, are available at the California Truth and Healing Council updates blog at catruthandhealing.com, and that's spelled out. You can also get updates for events by following the Governor's Office of the Tribal Advisor on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Additional details, including meeting dates, agendas, and background information, are available at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC. If you've not already done so, we'd appreciate if you could update your name to let us know who you are and where you're joining us from. We're going to start, as always, with a quick overview to get everyone up to speed on recent updates, and then we'll go through the listening session portion of today's convening. If you'd like to speak at any point, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. If you're using the Zoom app, you should be able to raise your hand using the app controls, but you can also use Alt-Y on Windows or Option-Y on Mac to raise or lower your hand. If you've dialed in, you should be able to raise your hand by pressing *9, or you can unmute your line by pressing *6. You may also email written comments to info@catruthandhealing.com at your convenience. And then also, if you have any comments at any time, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can just unmute your line and jump in if you have any questions about anything that we're presenting on today. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind participants that all of our council members, council staff, and many of you are members of the victim population in need of collective healing. So I ask that you engage with the council, our office, and each other with respect and with your whole heart and a healing mindset. Many of us are doing work that was never contemplated and navigating systems that was never built for us. This in itself takes an enormous amount of patience and emotional integrity, and we're all doing our best to make strides in these spaces. So thank you again for joining us, and I will now open it up if any of the council members in attendance would like to introduce themselves and say a few words. We've got Councilmember Burris and Councilmember Myers on if they'd like to introduce themselves and say a few words to the group.
I just want to say, Ayukui, thank you for attending, and I will be here listening and hopefully engaging in some fantastic dialogue.
Thank you.
I am also here to listen to what folks have to say. I'm Anthony Burris, and I am a member of my own Band of Miwok Indians, and I'm coming from West Sacramento, just on the other side of the river. So I kind of think of it as kind of a border area of about, Nisenan, Miwok, and Patwin people. And yeah, I'm just here to listen. Thanks.
Thank you, Council Member. Would anyone else in attendance like to introduce themselves to the group before we get started? And you can do so by just unmuting your line, or you can go off. You can go on camera. And again, all of the links that I just mentioned are in the chat. Thank you, Michael. Michael is here from my office as well. Okay, then I'm going to get started and do an overview of the council, where we're at, any updates, and then we'll open up for general listening. if anybody has anything that they wanted to bring to the attention of the council. And then we'll go into some of the questions we have for the group if anybody's ready to engage on those. And Michael, for those questions, if you could put those in the chat so that people can also answer them at their convenience if they don't want to speak up today, we'll do that too. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And again, all of these listening sessions are recorded, and there are links in the listening session overviews, and then they'll be generally available at that blog as well. Okay. Hold on, I have not shared my screen. That's the issue. Okay. Okay, and we do have also some updated graphics, which Loretta, my deputy, who's unable to be here with us this week, took throughout Indian country and California. So credit to Loretta, and we have some wonderful new pictures from throughout California Indian country. So today what we're going to do is go through an overview of the council and its charge, and then we'll go through the July council meeting agenda so that everyone knows what to expect. And then we'll go through any updates we have for this group, and then we'll open up to listening and discussion if there's anything that anybody came prepared to talk about that you might want to put before the council. And then we'll go into the questions that we have that we're still getting more information on for the public. And just for clarity, these questions are ongoing and we continue to collect feedback. And these are to inform the direction of the council as it moves forward. So they're not meant to be answered in one meeting. They're meant to be kind of throughout the year as we modify different methods and modes of meeting, getting more feedback and information so that the council can make some decisions toward the end of the year. And if I get distracted, it's because I'm also managing the waiting room. And so I apologize for that, but we're admitting some people right now. Okay. And so, you know, if you come to all of the listening sessions and you continue to have feedback, we're still listening to all of those, but also are trying to get, you know, a bigger pull of the public. And as we have more in-person options and then also more outreach, and that as we get people on contract to do more outreach, we're hoping to have kind of a robust snapshot of the community needs in order for the council to make some decisions about its scoping, the way it wants to move forward, and other questions. So what is the California Truth and Healing Council? The Truth and Healing Council is a council made up of representatives from California Native American tribes, and it's charged with bearing witness to, recording, examining existing documentation of, and receiving California Native American narratives to clarify the historical relationship between the state and California Native Americans in the spirit of truth and healing. Part of this is that we at the state acknowledge that the historical records that are available and the narratives that are out there are from a certain perspective that has a certain integrated bias. And this group is charged with hopefully attempting to help correct that bias and incorporate the critical viewpoints, the critical experiences, and the critical worldview of California Native people that that are still here, but that also experienced these acts. The council will submit a final written report of findings to the governor's office by 2025. And if it looks like we're getting to a place where we need more time, we can also modify the executive order and allow for some extensions. Given that it's a governor's executive order, we have some flexibility there in terms of timing, but we did want to put a timeline there just in the event that we wanted to make sure that there was a time certain where there would be something done, but it doesn't need to be everything. But we do encourage this council to look to at least having something that people can work off by 2025. And if it's also a report saying, you know, this needs to be done on a more broad-based, extensive level with this kind of funding, we're also okay with that. So it should reflect a holistic understanding of the historical relationship between California Native Americans and the state. And it can also make recommendations aimed at reparation and restoration, and consider how to prevent similar depredations or policies in the future. And so it's the two things of both clarifying the record so that it incorporates Native voices and experiences, and doesn't have a bias, or is as close to unbiased as possible. And then also that it can make recommendations to help correct some of these historical wrongs, and especially in the space where Native communities are still seeing issues today because of the things that happened during the beginnings of the state. The council is organized under a charter, and that's available on the CTHC website. So that's at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC. And you can find it under, I believe, I can find the website, but you can find all of the documents on the website, and we'll show you where those are later. But it's under a charter and is made up of voting members and non-voting members. And there are 12 voting members from each of the 4 regions, with 1 seat for a non-federally recognized designee in each region. And this was our best attempt to ensure that there was diversity of different statuses on the council itself. But the real idea, though, is that, you know, this council is receiving the experiences, the narratives, the stories of all Native people, regardless of status or identity. So should not be seen as a representative council, but a council that receives. The council welcomes and encourages all available methods for public participation. Participants are encouraged to attend and observe all meetings of the council, submit written statements to the council, make oral statements and testimony to the council, participate in interactive dialogues, panel discussions, and informal meetings, organize and host affiliate events on issues relevant to the work of the council, and join the work of the subcommittee. So in some spaces, we've been getting questions about, you know, when am I able to engage? When am I able to talk? And really the answer is you are able to do all of it whenever you feel like. And so just let us, you know, for example, right now, if you wanted to speak up, you could. But also, you know, if you ever wanted to meet, if you ever wanted to come to council meetings, they're open and available to the public. Right now, because of the Zoom structure, we do have more of a structure of how public comment is taken. But we anticipate that as we get into more of an in-person type of structure or a hybrid structure, we hope to have it be more of a collaborative community discussion rather than kind of, you know, right now there's a lot of business being done, but once we're in those in-person meetings, and then also once we're in the regular structure of the council, which is 1 day of talking and healing circle, and then 1 day of more of a hearing style structure, that there will be more community engagement in those spaces as well. If you're a California Native American tribe, we're seeking to begin in-person consultation meetings where your tribe is comfortable. And so you can reach out to us at this email at info.tribalaffairs@gov.ca.gov if your tribe is ready to meet in person. We're also flexible about the method and mode of meetings, and meetings will be recorded and transcribed. Tribes can share as much or as little as they're comfortable with. So we're also okay with having pre-meetings where we kind of discuss the process, figure out what works for your tribe, whether it's someone else takes those recordings or whether you do it on your own and we send you some of the equipment or kind of give you instructions on how to submit. We're okay with kind of anything that the tribe is comfortable with doing. So we're happy to have those conversations. And then if there are things that your tribe specifically needs in order to engage meaningfully, we'd love to have those conversations as well. So, you know, if you feel like you've got a lot of material, but you don't have the time or the resourcing to be able to collect all of that in a way that would be helpful to the council, we would love to know what those needs are so that we can collaborate with our philanthropic partners, with our organizational partners, and make sure that tribes, regardless of status of anything, of funding and resourcing, are able to engage fully in this process. And then outside of tribal consultation, the council and the tribal advisor are available to meet with Native American individuals, organizations, and groups at their request. So what we're going to start doing now that the state is just shy of about a month after being open, we are still being conservative with our travel and all of that, because we do have some we do have an ongoing pandemic. We do still have primarily children, but also immunocompromised and folks with certain underlying conditions that are not vaccinated and are not protected from COVID. So we are still being conservative, but we will be reaching out in the next few weeks to start seeing if tribes are ready to have those pre-meetings as well. So we'll be doing that soon. So for 2021, the council is currently meeting on a monthly basis. And right now it's virtually. The state has, when COVID started, the state had kind of a broad-based waiver for the in-person meeting requirements that are required under state law under the Bagley-Keene and Brown Meeting Act. And so that has created a lot of flexibility for the council to be able to, and other bodies, to be able to meet virtually. For the council itself, it's going through a lot of baseline business and a lot of document redlining, so this structure makes sense for the near term. But we are going to try to start meeting in person either by the end of the year or in the first meeting of the next year. So these meetings dates are dates that are contemplated for virtual meetings that go from 1 to 4 p.m. on Fridays. As we shift to in-person, we may adjust the timing. So if any of these turn into in-person meetings, we may adjust the timing just because travel time needs to be accounted for as well. But the next meeting is tomorrow. The meeting after that is August 20th. The next one is September 17th. The one after that is October 22nd, and then we've got a November 19th meeting. And then the council, if it feels like it's good and wants to go into the regular meeting schedule, which is December, March, June, and September, it can go ahead and kind of say, hey, I think we're good on our structural foundational work. We'd like to go into the normal regular meeting schedule, and then we will gear up for that. I think for this group, if there are ideas about what an initial meeting might look like, we'd love to hear those ideas. We've been thinking on the state side about places that are historically significant to all California tribes because of what happened. Either it was, the gold rush or the foundation of the, or the constitution of the state or something like that. But we're also completely amenable to whatever feels right for California Native peoples, whether it's, times when Native peoples and places that Native people celebrate or find to be significant, we're open to that as well. I think our the only other things to think about in this space are that we want to make sure that it's accessible to both to Native people regardless of status. So, the timing and then the location, we want to make sure is accessible. So if we're doing something that's going to be a bit more remote, then we may want to shift the dates to not being during the week so that people can be able to come out and take time to travel. And if it's going to be closer to an urban area, then we may be able to do more of a during the week type of thing. So the meeting agenda for July, again, is lengthy, and this typically happens because we carry over whatever we don't do in the previous meeting to the next meeting. But we did restructure it so that we can get to a couple of critical pieces that some of the community members have asked the council itself to consider. So we restructured it and put the draft review of drafts that are still in process and that really need more time for council review on the back end, and then put some of the things that the community has been seeking council engagement on toward the front end so that we don't, continue to carry those items over. So we'll go ahead and do the regular welcome, roll call, and traditional opening. We'll then approve minutes for May and June, and then we'll go into council member updates. Council member updates, that piece is meant to inform the council on anything that council members have been doing individually, whether they've been going to conferences, maybe they had a conversation with a partner organization, maybe they had a visit from the governor. Anything is okay in that space, and also just any ideas that they have based on those individual engagements. Maybe they chatted with their tribe about what their tribe thinks would be a good way to move forward, or any partners we should be engaging. We'll then go into the public and community engagement and input portion. And this is really meant to be an update on all of these listening sessions. We typically don't get to this piece in our regular monthly meetings. And so in this section, we'll have both the council members that attended the listening sessions, but then we'll also report out and we'll go over all of the summary documents that we've had to date, so that everybody knows what the community input has been up to that point if they haven't been reviewing offline. And then if council members have questions, they can always go back and watch the recordings that are posted as well. We'll then go into the budget update, which we're going to go over in a minute here. And then we'll go into subcommittees, and we'll start with updates from the council. So subcommittees. So subcommittee members for each of these subcommittees that are already standing up will have an opportunity to give updates, and then also staff will have updates for the group. So we'll have updates from the Youth Council, Academic Partnerships, and the Funding Partnerships subcommittees. And then we'll have a discussion on how to address the issues of status and identity, with particular consideration to disenrollment and recognition in California. We'll then have a discussion of an education subcommittee, which could be broken up into K through 12 or higher education. We'll also probably include a discussion of where the academic partnerships purview kind of overlaps, and where the education committee might do something different, or might modify what its scope would be. And then a discussion of an elder council similar to the youth council that would help inform the work of this council, and then any other subcommittees. We'll then go into the draft reviews, which I think we probably won't get to, but council members will be provided with updated drafts so that they can work on it over the next month. And then we'll go into next meeting dates and topics. Public comment will start promptly at 3 p.m. And this is open public comment for any items not on the agenda. Anything on the agenda, we have public comment for each of those items. So you can come for that specific item and give public comment during that item. If you aren't there during that item, you can also come at the back end at 3 and give your public comment then. So we'll start promptly at 3. It'll go until 4, or until public comments are done, whichever is earlier. So a couple of updates on the budget. So as I mentioned last time, due to budget impacts and the uncertain outlook of COVID-19, the 2020-21 enacted budget included $100,000 annually through 2024 to 25 to support the stipends for council members to attend council meetings, provide culturally appropriate wellness services for quarterly meetings, and then live streaming and transcription of meetings and consultations. And so this was meant to be, if nothing else came in, at least we'd have the ability to go out to the community, do those consultations, get that material, have meetings for the council, and be able to pay them for their experience, knowledge, and circumstances, and then also provide resources, at least in meetings, for a wellness practitioner to help folks work through some of the historical and ongoing trauma from the subject matter of this council. So this year, the governor signed off on the additional $350,000 annually. So the council now has $450,000 annually through 2024 to 25 to also support coordinating research, compilation, and consolidation of all known resources available within the State Library and Archives, and then presenting to the Truth and Healing Council at the quarterly meetings, depending on whatever the council is seeking, and the subcommittees as well. And then compiling and composing a report of findings and recommendations aimed at reparation and restoration. And so this is at the direction of the council. So as things kind of come together and feel a bit more solid, we will have these resources available to contract with a partner or with someone in the state to be able to provide these services as well. And then also to fund council and office travel for consultation meetings and subcommittee work, now that it's looking like travel is on the table again as well. So these are just some very brief summaries of updates from the subcommittees. And Councilmember Burris is welcome to jump in if you want to add anything, but the Academic Partnerships Subcommittee met and recommends targeted outreach to academic partners to refine its approach. In order to do this, it's developing a mission and vision statement so that the partners that are sought are done in a way that is targeted and makes sense for the work of the council rather than blanketed. And so in determining the kinds of outcomes that the subcommittee is looking for, they will then be engaging partners on that basis. So the subcommittee will meet also with the state library and the state archives to assist in scoping the work of the council. Part of this is a chicken and an egg type of situation where the subcommittee is wanting to understand the kind of workload involved in sorting through existing materials, and then also seeing what more needs to be done in terms of research and additional academic work. And so talking with the library, talking with the archives, they're going to be able to understand, you know, what's the world that exists within state resources and how much staffing and help does that need? And so, you know, will we be partnering with the UC or the CSU to get fellows to start going through and digitizing and, you know, sorting? Or is it that, you know, these resources are actually incredibly limited, so we actually need to get people to go out and find more stuff? So different kinds of things, but will help with how this subcommittee engages partners. The Youth Council Subcommittee has also met and seeks additional community engagement to address outstanding questions. And right now they're actually going out to different youth groups and talking to those groups about the Youth Council, what the Youth Council could be, and just getting some feedback from the youth about what they're interested in talking about, whether they're interested in joining. And so right now it's more of kind of a public push to get more feedback from the youth themselves. And then the Funding Partnership Subcommittee has been staffed and will meet with the Council's funding partner organization in the near term. As a brief update, which I didn't include in the budget update, we've also gotten the authorization to split the Tribal Advisor position from the Executive Secretary position at the Native American Heritage Commission. And for clarity, they were already split in statute. This was just providing some funding to support that split. And so that will be happening in the near term, so that I'll be able to focus more on this and the other projects of the Tribal Advisor's Office and the Governor. And then the Heritage Commission will be fully staffed to be able, at the executive level, to be able to also partner with this group to the extent that that is needed. And then the funding partnership or the funding partner organization is actually going to seek a program manager to help from the outside to coordinate any additional support, any additional needs, any additional staffing that this group might need. So that is TBD. But also, if you know anybody from the California Native community that has some background in philanthropy and in these kinds of major initiatives, we'd love to hear from you as well. Okay. Other subcommittees currently under consideration include a disenrollment specific, a recognition specific, an elders specific, and an education specific subcommittee. So now I'm going to open it up in case anybody had anything in particular they wanted to share with this group. And, you know, we'll kind of keep it open until folks are done sharing. But if we get to the point where folks aren't feeling like sharing, then we'll just kind of go through the questions that the council is still seeking some information on. And then we can also go through some of the existing feedback and some of the resources I told you about earlier, where to find documents and the like. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And if folks want to jump in, please feel free to unmute your line and start jumping in. It also looks like we have some new folks on today if you'd like to introduce yourselves, but no pressure. And if you do introduce yourselves, we'd like to hear a little bit about you, a little bit about what you hope the council can accomplish in its time.
Christina, hi, good afternoon. Oh man, just came back from Torres Martinez. I met with a couple of council members out there and let them know about Truth and Healing. I gave them the email link or the Zoom link, but they're not on, but they're interested. Also, you know, yesterday when we were talking about the California Department of Education's American Indian Education Overview Committee, which I think, well, I'm getting the feel for this. It deals with American Indian Education Centers. They met, and Council Member Kessler Mata is on that committee. So you know, left hand is going to do what the right hand's doing. I think you better ask her what they're up to. And again, I think the first time they met since 2017. Their funding is also. Yeah, I believe a lot. I missed it because I said I was with you guys and not with them, because you know, you and Loretta are a lot better looking than those guys on the other side. But it was interesting. Also, wow, something else I was going to mention too. Good. Like I said, literally, I just walked in the door. And then for anybody out there, the education part is again AB 1554 with Assembly Member Ramos. Emphasis on putting more California Indian history in the social studies history framework for the state of California, and which my wife informed me that framework is being up for review next year. So now is the time to strike. So again, what you all can do is email Assembly Member Ramos and show support, or just send it to Tony Thurman and show support that we really need this to be part of the framework. Because yesterday, one of the council members from that American Indian Education Center was telling a story about her son in, I think, 4th grade, where he brought, you know, if you put 5 important items in a bag and you bring it, you present it, and he got to the canoe part, and I think she was Salish, and so they explained. He said what the boat meant in Salish, and then the kids were, you know, just making fun of his language, and then one of the kids said this was deja vu. And so the teacher went on and they talked about deja vu instead of the Indian, and the importance of that canoe to that Indian boy. And he also took an eagle feather, and, you know, he said, well, you know, long story longer, he just said, no, they don't deserve to know about the eagle feather because nothing happened with the incident with the boat. And again, you know, I can't emphasize, and that's my main goal, to wherever I go, is talking about the need for American Indian teachers in the state of California. If that teacher was from the local area or just an American Indian, I don't think that would have happened. But again, we might be doing all this in vain because, you know, I was talking to my wife, since it's a 2-hour drive out to TM, about, you know, if we don't get this stuff done and we don't get educators into the classrooms, our ideas are not going to get across. They'll be put on through in terms of legislation, but again, who's going to be doing this? And again, it's going to be us guys as educators, myself, as and well, everybody else knows, after there are 38 years of teaching in the high school area history, it's really important that we try to get more and more teachers. And I also, Chico, Humboldt, come on, guys, you guys have teacher preparation programs. I would imagine you'd have Indian teachers coming out of the woodwork to go to Northern California high school areas. Down here, we'll try to get some of your Cal State San Bernardino, well, from yesterday, is showing interest in truth and healing and getting more involved in the Indian community. But again, it like I said, it's going to be difficult. I've been saying that all along, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. But again, we really need to get the point across. And truth and healing is part of that, and education, like I said, is part of the healing part. Now we're going to get it across to every student in California, non-Indian and Indian. So he'll keep on trudging on and see what happens. But so far, that's the report I've got, as per 20 minutes walking through the door and dusting off the dust from the reservation. So thanks again, Christina. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Robert. One thing I have for you actually is, do you know if there's ever been any effort to, I know there's like Indian colleges and tribal colleges. Do you know if there's ever been any efforts to do like tribal charters or tribal boarding schools? Like just actually like, this is like Sonoma area Indians, and we do like Pomo, we do Wintu, whatever.
I see. Usually, well, through the California Teachers Association, you can have an elder who speaks the language fluently, and the tribal council says yes, they can get an emergency teaching credential and have a class on their own. But again, I think I mentioned this 2 or 3 months ago, is that what we're finding is that they're taking students that are not necessarily the most model people in terms of education and putting them in their class. And so they have a hard time with classroom management because they're not trained in that. And again, that's another point we could talk about is our, let the council discuss, is the importance of getting those teachers, the people like my wife who are Indians, in the classroom and get their opinions or what needs to be done. Just coming from me is just saying we just need more teachers. I mean, that would be my simplest solution, is trying to get more students. California Indian Nations College down here, I think in Rancho Mirage, is California Indian run, or it's run by Indians for Indians. That's one of them. I'm pretty sure there's a couple up north.
Like how we have like Catholic high schools, Catholic elementary schools, like we have like culturally relevant places for people to go. Have you ever heard of a concept like, a native run school that is like run by native people with native values?
I'm sure there's some, but I can't think of any offhand except for Sherman. I mean, that's been around since day one, and with all the rigmarole that's happening with boarding schools. But at least with Sherman, they have a Sherman cemetery. It's not on campus. It's about 4 or 5 miles away, but they have a cemetery for Indian children who passed away when they were in boarding school. And people that would organize. Pechanga has a K-6 school. Soboba, I think, also has Noli. You mentioned that the other day. They have Noli, and I think Morongo has a school, I think K-6 or pre-K or something like that. So they're out there, but they're close to they're on-res schools. I don't recall any boarding schools that are run by Indians for Indians. That's a concept though. So.
Or even for non-Indian, like I feel like mostly Indians, but then kind of like how the Catholic schools do, where it's also you're indoctrinating people outside of the culture to understand cultural values that may be. Yeah,
I mean that'd work. I mean, I could see non-Indians. I mean, Eric Elliott down here, who's with me on the Journal of Great Basin. He's teaching Kauai, and he's non-Indian. But again, my Aunt Catherine, I don't know if you met Aunt Catherine, haven't you? Steve LaSable? Have you ever met her? I think so. I think you muted yourself. But anyway, so, you know, he went to her house and was just talking to her, and she picked him. And if you know my aunt, she's one of those Indian women you don't mess with. When she says something, you're going to do it. And basically that's what she did with Eric. She taught him Kuya, and he sounds pretty good, you know, talking the language. He's been doing it for so long. So yeah, I can see non-Indians be part of that too. You know, like I said, with Eric, or other non-Indians who have shown interest, who could be culturally aware. But you know, that's always a possibility. You know, you got all these
kind of learning it anyway, you know, like they're going to school, learning about our culture, learning about our languages, but if they're not learning it from us, they're not learning it in a way that is going to be respectful or isn't going to be extractive, or, you know.
Yeah, that's like I said
I didn't want to.
That's the whole point. Oh,
I didn't want to interrupt the conversation, but we actually ran a charter school several years ago, the Klamath River Early College of the Redwoods. It was a high school, junior college charter school. We had natives and non-natives. It was culturally centered. We had elders come in. We did the whole thing. We ran it for, I think, about 9 years, and it was, education-wise, it was extremely successful. You know, we had like 85-90% graduation rate. I think we had like 50% or higher, you know, graduate with AAs. We also have a program. We work with the local school district. We have the Yurok back in school in Witchbeck, so they can be successful. Our big fight was funding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the major items that one of my ex-students was talking about in terms of, yeah, I see myself doing this in terms of education, but when I start the educational push, you know, you have to have some kind of funding. And, you know, that's what disheartened her, is that it was just really, I want to emphasize the education part, but I can't do it because I have no money, and I have to, you know, put my feelers out there to get money. And that took a major portion of what she wanted to do. And it just kind of disheartened her. And she just kind of dropped out of the program and went back to the public schools. But, you know, like Chairman Myers was talking about, it's feasible. But again, we just have to concentrate on, you know, getting the funding together to promote these type of schools. But then that's something that other reservations can look into. That's a great idea. So that's a possibility too.
Great. I'm just thinking of things that could be interesting outcomes for this council too. And that also, like, I think when we think about the crises that California is dealing with right now, it seems a lot of it is almost the way that people think about things is in crisis too. You know, we think about like climate and all of this stuff as different things, housing, homelessness, but it's all like community and community care that should be thought about as all connected. And I think having education systems that are culturally informed in a way that stops focusing so much on the individual and individual success and thinks about it in terms of the collective and how we fit within this whole space. And that as caretakers, I think is a good way to think about this, how we move forward as a state generally, and I think could be marketable to people who might otherwise shy away from something that was more, felt more like insular. But I'll just put that there. And now it's in recording and you can use it against me later.
I never would, not me. But, and you know, in the chat, they were talking about that Prim from Humboldt. You know, that's great. I applaud, but again, I need to see, and like I said, when I was with the CTA and being the co-chair of American Alaska Native Caucus and going to the caucus meeting, and there's my wife, myself, Marty Meaden, and maybe two other people, another two other people, one of them was Indian, one was non-Indian. You know, it's kind of, we beat in the brush, like, and you know, and so does the Cal State San Bernardino is talking about, you know, getting people to come to these meetings. I mean, we've got what, 14, you know, and not as good as Central, but anyway, we have 14 on here.
You know, everyone's in Vegas though, Robert.
That's right. Darn Vegas, they should be at one. Never mind. I digress. I always wanted to say that. Anyway, but that's what we're trying to look at is that teacher push that we need. And Professor our Browning up in Nadu up in Chico State. He's in the teacher prep program, and I'm getting after him saying, get these guys out. You need to get these guys into the program, getting out as teachers. But again, that I myself, this is my personal opinion, just can't emphasize the real need that we need for American Indian, California Indian teachers. But again, hope. I've always got hope, and see what's going to happen. This conversation, the discussion that we have with Council Member Myers also, and tomorrow with I'm going to try to talk to Council Member Mark McCarrow about the educational component, especially working closely with James Ramos, just up the street from us in San Manuel. But again, just my 2 cents. So you do your monitoring thing, and I'll be here listening. All right, thanks, Christina.
You. Appreciate you. We've got a couple of comments in the chat. So we've got Pim is here, and feel free to weigh in, even if it's not your region. We kind of keep these open to everybody who wants to weigh in. If you would like to introduce yourself and say anything, we're happy to have your input. And then, and the idea of having these regional listening sessions be split up like this now is to get people used to it, so that when we do actually go out into the community in person, that we'll still be doing it on a regional basis. And so, Northern California will then look a bit different because we'll actually be going up to Northern California. Central will be looking a bit different because we'll be actually going to that region. And so we may actually have different makeup because, as we know, not everybody from a Central California tribe lives in Central California area. But that is kind of the idea here. So don't feel like you can't speak up if it's not your region. And then once we are in the in-person space, we will also be continuing to have at least one session that is just kind of free-for-all Zoom available, so that people can join and weigh in that way. Kathy has mentioned that Tule River had a school. HSU had a specific Indian teacher training program. And that's been over 15 years that there hasn't been funding. Is that a campus? And feel free to put that in. Oh, you're unmuted. So if you'd like to
I was gonna say, so ITEP was originally called the Indian Teacher Education Personnel Program, and we trained American Indian folks to become teachers. And that was we were over 50 years ago, and we did that for about 25 years. But over the last 15, 20 years, we haven't had specific funding to train teachers. So now we support students in all majors, and we have seen a real dip in the number of students who are interested in becoming teachers. So of the 200 or 300 graduates over the last couple of years, I would say we've had maybe 5 who are interested in becoming teachers, and we know we need many more. And so that's definitely an interest of ours as well. I was just kind of agreeing with Mr. Torres there. So just wanted to mention that, but we'd be definitely in support of sharing resources and information about how to train teachers, what the numbers have looked like for us in the past. And definitely we have seen a lot of the teachers who came through ITEP 40 and 50 years ago are all obviously retiring, and there is no California Indians to replace them. And it makes a huge difference for the youth who they're able to serve. So thank you.
Robert, were you going to say anything?
Yeah, Prem. Yeah, I think they had that down at San Diego State when I was recruited to go, and there were 15 of us, first freshmen to go in there, and yeah, I was the only one that graduated. And a lot of it was just other students were away from the reservation; they couldn't handle it. I was, I'm an urban Indian, so it was like, all right, from Riverside, California, Sherman Indian High School to San Diego State, there was a jump in terms of, oh my God, all these people. But again, that's the ish. I'm retired. Those guys coming to ITEP are retired or should be retiring. In my school district, there was myself, my wife, and one other Navajo lady who taught kindergarten, and that was it. Of the 150 teachers in the district, 3 of us were Native American. And again, that's what we're finding. When I was with CTA, and I was pushing so much to get recruited more into that field. And Humboldt, and I guess has passed and gone because of non-funding, but not Mitzi, the other one, Marisol from yesterday at Cal State San Bernardino. I think they're trying to get an American Indian teaching program started, I hope. UCR would be another good candidate down here in the South. Cal State San Marcos with Jolie Prophet, they're more of research, data collecting, and which again we need because everything runs off of data. So those are trying to get expressing the need for American Indian, California Indian teachers. San Diego State, we'll have to see what they do, but again, that's again funding. It's funding. So hopefully we can get past that, or get more people who can help us get the funding, federal or private, in getting more Indians as teachers in the state of California. Okay, press on. Thank you.
This budget that was just signed off by the governor did include, they re-upped the UC Prime program, which is a medical specific program, but it's incentivizing medical students from California tribes to serve California tribal nations. And so, that is at least like an example of something that we could start thinking about doing in the teaching field as well to support. I'm wondering, for those of you that are kind of speaking up on these issues, when you see, and did we lose? Oh, no, we didn't. Everyone just went off camera. When you see folks, or when you saw folks going through these teaching programs that are regional, did those programs and those teachers tend to stay in that region, or did they come kind of from everywhere? Because I think if we want to address it, again, like, you also want to have teachers that are going to be, going to urban areas where maybe like Indian nations are not as present because they don't see like signs for Indian lands and the like, but that where there's probably even higher populations of Native people. And so it's super important to have those people.
Speaking from ITEP, we definitely had the majority of students who came to Humboldt return to their own communities, but obviously because of our location in the far north, most of our students were from the northern part of the state. Not all of them, but most of them. So, kind of from Sacramento north, and most who were trained as teachers did return to their home communities, which included both rural and urban and reservation areas.
Yeah, with my program, most of us, it was more 50-50 urban and rural. But again, with my personal experience is that I got my degrees out of state, and then I went to UC Irvine and got my credential, and then went back. And then we went to Sherman Indian High School because there was a pipeline between UC Irvine and Sherman Indian High School. So I was I'm lucky, I guess. I just fit right in there and did all my student teaching for 3 years at Sherman. And then went to Notre Dame High School, which is a private Catholic school, which I graduated from.
Did you say that? Are you talking about the one in the Valley?
No, this is a smaller one. This is in Riverside. Okay. It's not the big, wonderfulest. No, not that Notre Dame. It's a littler school. And then then I spent the next 34 years at Upland High School, which was majority non-Indian. It was mostly Caucasian from 1986. But when I left in 2018, the surnames had changed to Hispanic surnames. So even within that urban area, there was white flight, and then the Hispanics were coming in. And so, it was really weird asking to be the MECHA advisor, and I'm American Indian. And I was going, closest thing we got. Okay. So, it is a different experience when you're going through the actual, teaching in a classroom with the kids that you have, learning about, oh, hey, Mr. Levi's not an Indian. And then you got Levi. Well, the heck is that Indian? Really quick, when I first got there, they introduced us into the district, into all the teachers there. And this one Jewish lady, Marilyn Lebarsky, I come to love her, and she goes, oh, we got another Gentile. I walk in there and she looks at me and she goes, "You're not Jewish?" And I said, "Well, you're not Indian." So, we became the bestest of adversaries, and we had fun. She taught AP Euro and I taught AP US, and went back and forth, and we became best friends. And so, that's the kind of response you get with, the last name of Levi or coming out of Torres Martinez. You get Torres or Sanchez or something, but you're Indian, but you have a Hispanic surname, which is kind of really, well, it's not weird because you look at the history, duh. But again, it's just with Levi's, it's like, oh my goodness. But again, just personal experience, you look at where we ended up at, or where I ended up at was, just somewhat fortunate. And then spending a 36-year career teaching U.S. history and taking the kids to powwows and watch them light up and go, oh my God, they're not, on the plains and shooting buffalo and wearing war bonnets. They're here, and there's different aspects of them. So again, it's something that teachers, I think, if we were Indians, we can fix it. The stigmatism and in a correct way show what California Indian history is all about, the horrors and the misconceptions that we can get rid of. So anyway, that's just, again, my 25 cents worth. I think I'm up to that much already. So carry on.
Thank you. And then we have a raised hand from Louise, if you'd like to unmute your line.
Hello. I wanted to talk about Browning Naidoo when they talk about Chico State. He is a very good professor. He moved up to Chico State last year. He was at CSUMB. Unfortunately, he left for a better position. And he's really involved. I think Mr. Levi mentioned his name, and he is a great professor. He's Potawatomi, and yet he's involved in a lot of California Indian events and teaching, making sure that students are aware that California Indians are here. And he worked with us, our tribe, a lot when he was down at CSUMB. And I also want to mention that Dr. Melissa Leal has just received a position at Sierra College, and she'll be starting. And I also have a niece down at University of San Marcos, Cal State, teaching. And I think it's not that they're not in Native programs, it's that they're not available, or not just not there for our people who are becoming educators to participate in and to go sign up and to work. I mean, they're young people, they're barely starting out in their lives. They need to have a payment, and so therefore I don't think we can expect them to be teaching a lot more until there's the universities provided and hiring Native individuals in those positions. So I just want to say there are those out there. I'm sure there's a lot more. Those are just the ones I know because they're tribal members with our tribe. And I just want to say I know Browning is very good, and he volunteers for a lot of different programs, and he is more than willing to teach California Indian. So I just wanted to bring that information that they are out there, and Melissa Leal's very good as well. In I didn't say the doctor, but anyway, she's out there. But just to know that they are out there, but they need to find the jobs so that they can teach, because Melissa and I work on our tribal language, and so we want to start again with that. So they're out there. We just need to have the places for them to teach. Thank you.
Oh, I agree 100%. I know Browning from he did a CCSS presentation about curriculum that actually worked or field tested. So I went there, and we're the only two Indians in there, and you know, we just hit it off and had a good time. You know, he says, "Hey, why don't you help me teach this?" And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He goes, "Here, this is what I want you to do." And so we just worked that classroom or that presentation hand in hand, and it was just, you know, we were hand in glove. Browning's a great guy. He's helping me. He's helping us, I should say, write ethnic studies curriculum for. Hopefully, the CDE will pick up on it and use it as a model for their ethnic studies and the American Indian component, because what they presented 2 years ago, just to be blunt, it sucked. It was terrible. The only good part of that curriculum was a shell mound lesson that was written by Ohlone, I believe, the tribe up there, and that was the only decent one. Everything else was not very well written, and so he's helping us write that curriculum. In fact, he and my wife are doing the elementary portion of the component, and I'm writing the high school. Like I said, I just mentioned before, I'm just getting one of the lessons on the 1924 Indian Citizenship Act, and then I'm working on another one with for junior high school about comics, Indian comic heroes. And so, you know, yeah, Browning right now, I think he's in back middle America doing an Institute of Art presentation with Mark. So, you know, he's having a somewhat a good time. But yeah, Browning, like you said, they're out there, and I guess one of us, or we, basically have to just beat the bush to get those guys out there and say, where are you guys at? We really need you, especially now with Truth and Healing and that American Indian Education Overview Committee that started up yesterday. And then, you know, also just the need of the communities that need local Indians to come back and teach the children, you know, both elders and within the public school system. So, you know, yeah, Browning's a good guy. I really like Browning. So anyway, another my 55 cents. So the 55 cents. All right,
I'm going to add something more for you, because I just got, since you mentioned comics, Chag actually sent me some of his stuff. So this just came, My Sisters, Follow the Water, and these are all California Native stories, so, and then Soldiers Unknown.
Ah, yeah.
Again, not an endorsement, but.
Of course not, never. My wife would not endorse those either, but she has all those for her classroom. So heaven forbid that no one looks at both of us and says, we're not endorsing, when we're not. So thank you.
Excuse me, and my sister's going to kill me. I forgot to mention her name, Dr. Deborah Miranda. So she's out there too. She just retired, but I'm hoping that she'll start coming around more.
And she's got some books too, right?
Right.
Yeah, give her some arrowweed and help me beat the brush for all those other kids to come out and become teachers. I need all the help I can get.
We do.
Okay.
Wonderful, thank you. We've got about 15 minutes left. We've got some more comments in the chat. So it looks like we should have at least an alternate session that is at a different time of day, and we totally agree. And that's kind of some of the feedback we wanted to hear is, you know, if this time doesn't work for everybody, do we think we would get more community members if it's after hours? I think what we may do is try to think about, and maybe this is how we kind of shift into kind of a hybrid listening session mode, where we do maybe a Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Joint listening session, and then the rest are regional, and those would either, you know, continue to be Zoom until we get into real life, or maybe we start thinking in the next month that we do those actually regionally in person, and then do a 6 p.m. Wednesday for everybody who couldn't attend in person. So we'll add that as, you know, a second option, I think. Dinner with Christina. Yes, we can do that. If you also bring some abalone, and are we allowed to eat that yet? I don't know. But I'm happy to do that on a Wednesday night, and we can all just kind of sit and chat. And then, yes, all of the stuff. Everybody bring everything, and it'll also be sharing some culture too. Okay, good. Later meetings. Yeah, and kind of what we're trying to do is make sure that also people who have full-time jobs too are able to join in the event that they can't make time during the day. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. And then I think what we are going to do is start putting out some feelers for in-person listening sessions for maybe next month. That might be too soon, but I kind of want to try it. And so if folks have places where they feel like are good places to do it, I think the ability to have something that is outdoors is really good, somewhere with parking and somewhere that's convenient to communities would be great, would be best. So if any of you know of anywhere like that where Native people are already convening and are comfortable with, that's ideal. If there are, one thing we talked about in other listening sessions are if there are already, you know, big times, powwows, other convenings happening over the summer and during the normal times that you would like people to come and talk about the truth and healing stuff, we would love to do that. We can send some folks to table and provide materials. So we are kind of open to all of it. And you know, it's been only about a month since we reopened, so we are kind of just like dipping into this, but I think we do really want to make sure that we're getting to places where we can have the most impact. So, you know, if we are doing a listening session at Sherman, for example, when is the right time to do that? Okay, any other just general comments for the group? I can go through the questions in the last 10 minutes. There's also a link in the chat, but also if folks have stuff, I think, Ken, you went off mute, so maybe you have something you'd like to share.
Hello, can you hear me or am I still muted?
We can hear you now.
Oh, great. Yeah. I have two daughters that have their masters and such. But the problem is, reality is they're not really recognized. They don't get higher education funding. They would love to go to higher education, so they have to pull out student loans, and we know how those are. So, you know, us, the unrecognized, or the non-service tribes, do have issues with children that want to get educated. So, you know, we got to look at some sort of funding for California. Back in the 80s and the 70s, they did have funding. You know, had sisters and brothers that went to higher education. Actually, my brother was denied because they said he did not belong to a federally recognized tribe. And that kind of hurt. You know, he did find a way to become what he is now, an attorney. But, you know, it's those drawbacks. Like I just got an email from one of our tribal members who wants to go into nurse practitioner. There's no funding. There's no funding for us California Indians that aren't part of a federally recognized or service tribe. So that's one issue that we need to look at. If we want to get these children up there, these younger people, we need to make sure we have funding for them, you know, and that's an issue I see every day. You know, not only one tribal member, but 4 or 5 of them want to go higher, you know, and they can't because funding, they don't have the money. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. So one thing that this council has been grappling with in the subcommittee space, at least, is, you know, in order to address that, there needs to be kind of a baseline for how to address it. And so given that folks that are disenrolled and given that folks that lack federal recognition are people that also need to benefit from these kind of policies and reparations and restorative actions, how does that baseline get set in a way that feels like it reflects the community without being an overreach? And so I think that's just not something that's going to be solved in the next 9 minutes, but something to think about in terms of if there were to be a proposal to make individual Native people whole, regardless of status, et cetera, how would that work, and what would be the baseline, and what would be most respectful to Native communities? Because, you know, I think the issues that are being talked about today too, that was the whole driver behind the Tilly Hardwick lawsuits, was that, you know, tribes were terminated, and then some of the folks that are my predecessors here, their mom went and was wondering why her kids weren't able to go to college the way that she should have been able to. And they were all told that because the tribes had been terminated, that they no longer were covered. And so that initiated a lot of restoration of tribes, of different federal rights. But after like a lot of pain, a lot of money, a lot of fighting. And so, you know, if there were a way to address that on an individual Indian basis, I think that this council wants to think about, you know, how to frame that in a way that is respectful, but also is not over-inclusive of folks that may have some inkling of Native descendancy from some, you know, we all know the stories, you know, so, you know, for actual Native people that need to be made whole. So hopefully I haven't offended every single person here, but that's something that they're grappling with, because if they want to have
Offended.
Huh? I offended you? I'm sorry. But if the council wants to have real solutions, they need to have a real baseline to work from in order to reach all the people that need to be reached. So just putting that out there. Additional thoughts, questions, concerns? Okay. So the questions for the public, I encourage you to go to that website and fill in some of your thoughts, or we can also schedule times to just meet with you and go through the questions if you're more comfortable doing that on a one-on-one basis. But they're really kind of the foundational questions for the council. And I don't think we have time to go through them all, but really it's questions in terms of scoping. So what state actions should the state be most accountable for from the Native perspective? I know that some of you have heard these questions over and over, but really these are the foundational questions that will frame the work. And really the idea is those actions and their impacts are what will frame, and Michael just put it in the chat, thank you, are what will frame how the report and how the agenda, the research agenda is even framed. So, you know, I think the report can be a lot of things, and I think that's something that the academic subcommittee is thinking about is, you know, is this a policy-making report, or is this a, you know, clarifying history or changing how we talk about history and from whose perspective and what inherent biases are there, and whose voices are elevated. And so I think it can be both, or it can be one or the other, but really because there are recommendations for reparations and restoration, at least a component of it should have a link to what is that historical record and what is the legacy that can be corrected, or at least an attempt to correct. And the recommendations to correct are what those reparation suggestions are. So let's say, you know, my tribe thought it had a treaty. In the meantime, the legislature said that everybody had to go and make sure that their Mexican land claims and their land status was carried over into the new American statehood scope. But nobody told our tribe. They thought they had a treaty, and then all of their land was lost because nobody helped them and actually encouraged this to happen. Because of that, we have no land, we have no access to water, we have no access to fish, and we can't do our traditional ways. That's a very clean line between the thing that happened at the beginning of the state to the thing that the tribe is still suffering from now, and that can actually have some actual recommendations to make that right. And so that's kind of the thing that the council is looking to see, is like, what are those actions? And what are the things that your tribe is dealing with now, or that you individually are dealing with now, if you're not a member of a tribe, but you are a descendant of a Native person. you know, trying to kind of align and address those things based on the gap there. Other questions are specific to the different subcommittees. And so I encourage you to take a look at those. I think for the Youth Council, the most important piece is, are there existing gatherings and existing groups that this council can just plug into to start getting more information from youth? We don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel, and we also want to talk to youth where they're at and where they feel comfortable. And so if there are things that are already in existence that this council can just plug into, we'd love to do that. And then funding partnerships, I think the most critical questions are, what are the needs of the community, which are at the tribal, organizational, and individual level. So your tribe doesn't have a travel budget, so they can't come to meetings. That's a need that we can quantify, that we can ask philanthropy to start funding. Organizational, my organization helps non-federally recognized tribes seek recognition status. We're underfunded, we need 5 more attorneys. That's something that we can quantify, that we can also put on our funding partner to go out and think about. Individually, I am a cultural practitioner. I'm always asked to come and share things for free. I think that's ridiculous, and it's not on par with academics that are paid for their time. I want to come and engage, but I don't want to do that for free. I think it's not fair and it's not respectful. Okay, what is that? And we can quantify it and we can fund that. So that's kind of the questions that the funding partnership subcommittee is thinking, or that would be helpful for that partnership subcommittee as they work with our funding partner organization. And we do have a funding partner organization. We are working with the Decolonizing Wealth Project, which is Edgar Villanueva's group. And they are going to be kind of the hub for all of the philanthropic outreach. They're also going to be doing a pretty large communications campaign. And they're the ones who are also going to be hiring someone to be a program manager for all of that kind of work. So we have a subcommittee, which is Vice Chair Myers, and I'm missing a couple, Councilmember Kessler-Mata and Councilmember Maccaro. And they will be working with that group to frame the asks and then also frame the needs that this council, but then also the future needs, so funding reparations actions might look like. So we're about at 1 minute. If there are final thoughts, please feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I will turn to our council members to have any final thoughts before we sign off today.
I'll throw my 2 cents. I was very encouraged by today's conversation. I think this is, I think that we're getting like pretty good feedback the more and more we do. I love the conversation around, teachers, charter school education. That's fantastic. Thank you all for chiming in, giving your input, and keep it up. Keep coming back. Tell a couple friends as well. Let them know we're cool people. We like to listen, and that we will actually take the input. That it's extremely important because it is extremely important, especially as we go further and further down. I know we've been doing a lot of busy business work. But the further we get into this, I think the more important it actually is going to continue to get that, our California Indians and tribal people in California really start to weigh in, write us, email us, message, give us your input so that we can really make this move. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to announce just really quick, since we were on this topic so much today of K through 12 education and that sort of thing, that I did actually take a 25% researcher position for 2 months this morning, where I'll be working with the UC Davis History Project on K through 12 curriculum from Indigenous perspectives. I don't have a really good understanding of it yet, so that's why I was kind of reluctant to mention it, but maybe I should throw it out there so people are aware that there could be possibly a bridge between what we're doing there and that program, obviously. So I just wanted to mention that really quick, and just stay safe out there, and maybe we'll see some of you tomorrow.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate the discussion, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.